Live Check Yourself with Phil Weiss. Money, freedom, and reinvention. How to take control of your financial future at any stage or phase. Welcome. Do I sound like Dax Shepard? To another amazing episode of Life Check Yourself. This episode is really important for you if you are a woman who doesn't know exactly your personal finance scorecard, so to speak. I wanted Phil to come on. You're going to meet Phil Weiss. He's the founder of Apprise Wealth Management. Because I was just talking to someone else about this, how so many women, either they create wealth, they have money, but they don't really even know what they have, how it can serve them. It's almost like it's like this thing that is like scary. We have so many messages in our generation growing up around money. I've heard people also say that their money is their arm candy. So they put their self-worth and their financial security above lots of different things and maybe push people or opportunities away and live in fear. So it's a juicy topic for us. And I'm excited to have you here, Phil. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So let me tell you all a little bit about him. He started in 1987 as a tax professional at Deloitte & Touche. Is it still called Deloitte & Touche? No.
Yes, it is.
It is? Because my daughter works for Deloitte Digital. Is that the same?
It might be.
Who knows? But Deloitte & Touche, meaning he's been doing this for over 25 years, working in personal finance and investment management. He's got all these letters after his name, like CFA, CPA, and RLP. He's been established as a recognized authority in this field. He's been a media spokesperson, market commentator, been on lots of podcasts. And his insightful blog for Apprise focuses on long-term investment strategies. And Weiss here, his commitment to financial education. And I want to get started off with your story about how you became committed to working with women in personal finance.
Sure. So in my house, it was the typical model that you often hear. My father was responsible for the finances. My mom had primary responsibility for my sister and I. But here's the thing. When it comes to managing finances, my father wasn't good at it at all.
Okay.
We had unpaid bills. We had services turned off. We had no credit. There was no savings. When I was old enough to drive, I remember having to go down to like the local utility and the phone company to pay bills so services could be turned back on. It was just not good. When it was time for me to go to college, I was told, go anywhere you want. Now, with what I know today, I might not have taken that so literally, but I did. And I decided I was going to go to Duke and I was going to be a doctor and I was a psychology major.
Okay.
And I did a lot of things to stay in school, including speaking to the president of the university when they said nobody was going to have to leave for financial reasons. But at the end of my junior year, I owed them enough money that we thought it made sense for me to leave, get enough money to pay back, and then go back.
Okay.
So I went back home, and I was from New Jersey originally, and it was a toxic situation. So I moved across the country. I moved out to Tucson.
Okay.
And while I was out there, I didn't really want to do what I had set up to do. Like, my grades were good, but not good enough probably to get into medical school.
Right.
Psychology major meant a lot more school. I didn't have the money for that. So I said, I'm good in math. I'm going to be an accountant.
Okay.
And I applied to Rutgers. I applied to University of Arizona because I had residency for both places. Decided I'd get a better job out of Rutgers, so I came back home. I finished at Rutgers. While I was doing that, my mother actually went back to school and became an occupational therapist.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And I lived at home when I first finished school.
Okay.
Because I had paid for some of my education with, those credit card checks.
Yeah.
If I didn't have enough money for rent or I didn't have enough money for all my tuition, I wrote a credit card check. And at the end of the first year of work, I looked and said, oh my God, I paid all this in interest. I don't make enough to do that. So I put in place a plan to take care of it. But like I said, I was living at home. And one day I came home and I went and got the mail. And there were these credit card bills. They had my name on them, but there's only one problem. They weren't mine. My father, and I actually got proof of this, forged my name to open up credit card accounts.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to say that I'm surprised, but I had someone recently tell me that their parents pilfered their bat mitzvah money.
That happened to me too. My bar mitzvah money, I lost some of that too. Same thing. My father did it.
Yeah. So that's so unfortunate. So what happened?
So I confronted him about it. The rent that I was paying when I lived at home, I used it to pay off those balances. And then I moved out after that was all done. And my mom, I said she went back to school. She became an occupational therapist. She started her own business. It was really so she could put herself in position to move out, just get away from her father and do her own thing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer while all this was going on.
No.
Yes. And that's when we figured out how bad the financial situation really was. Those credit cards, they put them in my father's name because he was making at least the minimum payment. So they're like, it's okay, we'll move them. They were all past due. The house that my parents had lived, we lived in since I was in 5th grade. My parents had to sell it because they couldn't stay there. And, my mother asked me to help. And I did what I could, but unfortunately my mom didn't make it. She passed away about 18 months later. Her metastasized to her brain.
Oh.
And so now I kind of view the work that I do as trying to help other women avoid the kind of things that my mother went through. And so when you're talking about all my designations, RLP is Registered Life Planner. And so it's one of those kind of trainings where you have to do it too.
Right.
And so I created my life plan in that training. And so one of the key elements of my life plan is I want to create a scholarship for women who go back to school later in life like my mom did.
I love that.
Oh, thank you.
That's amazing. So you were an accountant, and then you moved out, your mom passed away. And did you always know that you wanted to work with women, or was this something that just happened the more that you saw it as you pursued, your career in wealth and finance?
So I did a lot of other things before I got to like what I do now. And when I first started, I'm like, oh, I'm going to work with doctors, right? Because I had worked with a lot. I wanted to be a doctor originally.
Right.
I had worked with a lot of pharmaceutical companies and things like that while I was with Deloitte. But that's really, you can't really force things like that.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there one day and one of my friends says to me, Phil, you should work with more women. And I said to her, why? And she gave me her reason. I said, that kind of makes sense. And I looked at my clients. And at that point, I said, I bet you like a quarter of my clients are where the wife or the woman leads the relationship. It was almost 2/3. It just happened by itself. And then as I went through the training and everything, I kind of remembered all the elements of my story and said, this must be why it makes sense, because I have feeling for these women that are going through these things. And so it just kind of happened by itself.
That's amazing. Let's talk about this life planning, because, I believe in intentional life design. And when I work with clients and they do their kind of life plans, that's why we always end up talking about money, because I'll say like, well, could you pivot in your career? Like, do you have resources, or do you know when you can retire? Could you retire early? Like, and they're like, I don't know, like they're like, I have to get that in order. I haven't really done that. And these are women in their 50s and 60s. So if you're listening to this and you're of that age, just know you're not alone. Like, don't hide in shame and not do it. Like, this is the time to look at it. So tell me about your life planning process and why do women need to do that?
So I'll tell you why they need to do it first, and then I'll talk to you about the process. Okay. So if I think about it, life planning at its core is about avoiding regret. And what I mean by that is, let's figure out those things that are really important to us so that we can do them and not get to the end of life, regret not having done them.
Yep.
And that's really important. Like I said, with the scholarship, like that's something, it's so much better that I've thought about that now so I can do it while I can see it happen and see the benefits of it than have it happen after I'm gone.
Right.
And so the life planning process, there's an acronym that describes it. It's called EVOKE. So the first part, that first E, is exploration. So the first time we meet, it's just kind of, why are you here? What are you looking for? Dream big. What do you want? And then from there, we go into V, which is vision. And during vision, you get some exercises to complete. And we ask 3 questions. The first question is, imagine that money was no object. If you do anything you want, what would you do? Dream big. Think about what you would do and how would you live your life. But then it starts to get harder. The second question is, this time you go to the doctor. You get the unfortunate news you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good news is you're not ever going to feel sick. The bad news is you don't know when you're going to go. Money is part of the equation. It's now kind of becomes, what would you do and how would you change your life? And then the last question.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. And the last question is the hardest one of all. This time you go to the doctor and get the unfortunate news, today is the day. And obviously that creates a lot of emotional, hard feelings. And while some people try to answer it this way, it's not what would you do? It's what did you not get to do and who did you not get to be? And so by focusing and talking through those questions, we kind of figure out those things that really matter to you and we take them and create a vision. And that first initial vision that we create is going to take place, normally something we see happening in the next no more than 2 years, but usually I try to keep it to 6 to 18 months.
Okay.
And then we get to O, and O is obstacles, because now we want to think about what could get in the way. Mm-hmm. While we're going through all this, it's not me telling you any of those things. It's me giving you a chance to talk through them and think through them and figure it out for yourself. I'm just there to facilitate. And then we get to the K, which is the knowledge. So that's now where we want to take this information to help incorporate it into your financial plan. Okay. Right. And then E is to go out and execute. Let's go live that plan.
I love this so much. It's funny. My mom died at 64. And when I was at 55, I had this ski accident and it was near crippling and a lot of stuff happened. And I talk about it a lot on the show. But that was the question. It just hit me. My mom said, like, I'm going to come like to you in butterflies. And I was sitting in my office and this butterfly came. And this thought was like, if you had 9 years to live, do you want to spend it sitting in this house looking at pictures of your kids when they were little? Yeah. Because I was so terrified, Phil, to like let go of that part of my life, but I didn't know what the next part was going to look like. So I was just kind of frozen. But that was it. I was like, shit, 9 years. Do I literally want to be like, well, I waited for my kids to come back from their careers in college to visit. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is.
What's the most interesting or surprising reaction when you ask women these questions? What do you usually see that comes up?
So usually the things that are really important are kind of the things you should expect. It's family, it's travel, right? For some people that are more religious, there's spiritual elements that come into it. But also the biggest realization that comes, and one of my clients told me this. So when I finished my life planning training, I blogged about my life planning experience and shared my life plan. It's on my website. Yeah. And she said to me, Phil, I read your life plan. She said, thank you. Because I've been sitting here and I've been trying to build the biggest pile of money without ever thinking about how much I needed or what it was for. Right? Because we always see what everybody else has and we want those things without thinking about what's so most important to us. Right. And it really changes your perspective. It's like you hear people that say, don't get that $15 latte or whatever it is. My answer is you can get it, but you have to think about what you're giving up in exchange. And if that trade-off is worth it for you, that's fine. But if it's not, then don't do it. Like I like to use acronyms, so I'll tell you another one.
I love acronyms too.
So I say that we have a team of resources. Okay. And by team, I mean our time, our energy, our attention, and our money. And we want to think about how we use those things and align them with the things that really matter to us.
Yes, because when we are, I talk about this thing, time denial, where people have like this idea that they have all the time in the world, right? Or that it doesn't matter. I'm going to have the latte because YOLO, right? And like, and so, and it's really interesting. And so, and I heard a money coach actually talk about, she said, people have it all wrong. They think that, time is unlimited and money is finite, but really time is unlimited. Time is what's limited and money is like a moving thing, right? Like it can grow, it can get smaller. Like, you know, you have more control over money than you do time.
Yes, you do. And like, I love to tell this story too. So the house that we live in now, we moved here. My kids were all really little. I have 4 kids. Yeah. And the woman that we bought the house from, she had a tractor. I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy the tractor and I'm going to cut the grass myself.
Yeah.
So I did. And I will tell you that it would take me 3 hours and I didn't finish. And the only part that I liked was that one of my kids would like sit on my lap while I rode the tractor around.
Right.
And I found out later when I sold it that the tractor really wasn't big enough. And that was the problem. That's why it took me so long. But my wife, thankfully, found somebody that would cut the grass for $40.
Right.
And I said to myself, 3 hours of my time are $40. I think my time is worth more than $13 an hour. Please cut the grass. Right? Because you can exchange. It's an exchange, right? How much is your time worth? And think about
that's what's, I think another thing I really want people to hear is like, I talk to a lot of clients, and some of you are listening probably, that work really hard. Maybe they are single, right? Or they're the major breadwinner. And then they talk about how they're so exhausted at night, or they use their weekends to recover, but they won't consider like hiring a housekeeper or using like a grocery delivery service to not go to the store, right? Because the add-on expenses. And I think what you're saying, Phil, is like, you really have to look at how are you using your time? And if you are trying to save money, but it's taking your time, is that really how you want to live your life?
Absolutely right. It's a trade-off. You have to figure out which is more important to you. And a lot of times, like you said, our time is much more limited, right? So let's sometimes use our money to buy us more time.
So I'd love to hear about like, I know that you talk about like financial role models and the influence of financial role models. And I saw that and I was like, what does that mean exactly? And how do we use that?
So, I told you my story at the beginning. So I always say like, there's 2 types of role models, right?
Yeah.
There's good ones and bad ones.
Yeah.
So I had a really bad one, but in the end it worked out well because I learned everything that I shouldn't do.
Right.
But the bottom line is you just want to find somebody or find somebody that you can read or talk to, whatever, that has a good financial head on their shoulders, because all this stuff is not easy, but we can all do it. Like I say, I'll use another acronym. To do what I do, you have to have KIT.
Okay.
And KIT is you have to have the knowledge.
Right.
And you can always if you want to, you can get the knowledge. You have to have the interest, and some people don't have the interest. And then you also have to have the time. Especially as we get older and our life gets more complicated, we don't have that time. And then you sit here and for the first part of your life, it's all about saving, right? And then we get to the second part, and now it's time to start to spend. And the rules all change, like the tax rules are very different between putting money into your retirement accounts and taking them out. And you don't know what those are, and you've never had experience with them. And a lot of people, they're such savers that they get to the end and they don't even know how to spend. And sometimes like these exercises, like going through the life plan and going through a financial plan, it can be eye-opening. I'd love to tell a client story about how this all worked.
I was just going to say, give me an example.
I'll be happy to. So one of my first clients that I worked on a life plan, I got an email from her and she said, Phil, I'm taking a leave of absence from my job. I don't know what it means to my financial plan. I don't know what it means for anything. I don't know if I'm even going to go back, but I have to do this. I started to email her back and I said, nope, this is a time for a phone call.
Right.
I called her and said, what's going on? And she told me a little bit more. And I said, let's work on your life plan. So we did. And now I look at her. She's an entirely different person, how she talks, how she looks. We've become friends because of all the things, all the time we spent together going through this. And my favorite story about her is about a year later, she said to me, when I was in my 20s, now she's in her 50s, she said, I used to go to baseball games for my favorite team. And I'd see these older women that were there either working as ushers or taking tickets or something. I said, when I get older, I want to do that. So she goes, so I went on the team's website and I applied for a job. I went in for an interview. I had my World Series t-shirt. I had my jersey on. There were all these young kids there. I got the job. And so she left that other job that she had, right? Because that wasn't for her. She's still doing a lot of other things, but she left that other job. This past year, she worked for that team not just during baseball season, but she did some concerts. They had a hockey game that they played there. She worked at that. You see pictures of her on Facebook all the time about all the different things and experiences that she's had, not just doing that, but other things that she and her husband wanted to do. They had lived with both of them having high paying jobs, but lived on one salary. So they were in really well positioned. And then we've worked on more things. And so now we're doing a lot more tax planning and tax strategies. And we went through and kind of looked at like, what might their future look like? And when they looked and saw how much money, like his reaction was, I can't believe you've been making, because she does all the finances.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he had no idea.
No idea. He goes, I can't believe that you've been giving me a hard time about some of these things when I look and see where we are and how much we can spend. This is crazy.
Well, people have a hard time spending. Do you know what I mean? I think even from my own mindset, like, we get in that mindset of like a build, save, whatever. And then you're like, wait, like, do I have to keep grinding at this level, like, or not? But it becomes very hard to say to yourself, I want to go to Africa and it's 15 grand or whatever it is. And you'd be like, I would never spend that much on a trip. Right. But you're like, I can, and I want to do it because I don't want to have that regret. And so it's about really it sounds like what you're saying is there's a high level of consciousness and decision making and intention that goes into this process. And women often, maybe I'm wrong, but I think from working with women, it's very hard to do something for yourself.
Yes, it is. And it is really important. Being intentional is so important. I know in my house, we've made a lot of those, as this has gone on, we've made a lot of changes too. Like I remember telling my wife when our kids were little, we went on a trip that her parents took us on. And my wife also was one of four. And I just saw how close everybody was. And I thought it was so nice. I said, we have to make a thing of taking our kids with us to different places. So as they get older, and I'll tell you, my oldest is 27, our youngest is 18. And we went on a cruise in January, and 3 of the 4 kids came with us. And we went away over the summer, and they came with us, and they're like, when's our next trip? Right? Because we've made that intentional thing. And like one of them who's got a serious girlfriend, he's like, and when does she get to come with us? Right.
It's so funny, Phil, because I just had my kids, they're 29, 26, and 22. And we went to Hawaii and they all came. And at the end, they looked at me and they go, Mom, I think this might be the last year without the boyfriends. And I was like, yay. I like all their boyfriends, but it's like your family's growing. I think you want to be able to do those things. Let's talk about transitions, because I think for women, there's an obvious divorce transition that can happen. I work with a lot of clients also who lose their partner and they die before them. There's also like wanting to retire early. What are some of these transitions and how can women be the best prepared for them?
So in addition to what you mentioned, I think another one is that empty nest.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. That's another one. And I really think, like, when I talk to women that are at any one of those transitions we talk about, life planning is so good because it really helps them get an idea about what's next and what they want to do. Like going through those, when I have a new client, I love to start with life planning, but I have clients that I've had before I did life planning. And whenever one of those big transitions comes up, I said, let's work on your life plan. And they always appreciate it because when we're done, they have so much of a better understanding of what they want to do and where they want to go. And like one of my clients, we finished, and not only did she have a better understanding, but she said, that vision you gave me, can you please send it to me? Because I want to hang it up on my refrigerator so I can see it every day and be reminded of these things that I said I wanted to do.
And that's so true. It is so true. I remember, so we were talking about financial role models. So my dad grew up in Great Neck. And he never felt like he was as rich as the other kids. And he always felt, I think till the very end, like he was successful enough, but he always didn't, embrace that. And he always felt like he didn't do well enough. And he always worried about money, like loud and proud about it. I thought, like life is so much more than like, that measure of success, right? And this life plan process is really showing you to like really put your eye on what you really care about.
Yes.
And that you win because you've allowed the opportunities to do A, B, and C or make those different choices. But I remember when I was 10, he had a family business and he came home and I was like watching the Brady Bunch and he was like, so I quit the family business today. And I said, are we going to be poor? And he's like, no, it'll be okay. Right. But that was my first thought. And so it's really been interesting. And then I grew up in that weird generation of, you're supposed to get married right away, but then you're supposed to be a feminist now and really powerful. And so I didn't know anything about money. I let my first husband do all of that stuff. So what do you advise for women that like find themselves in that? I think women that are like my age in their 50s, 60s, like how do we start to create an identity of financial confidence, security, and all those things?
So there are a number of people that I work with that I kind of look at it was kind of like that same model that I talked about in my house, right? Where they didn't have a lot to do with the finances and he's been taking care of them.
Right. Yeah.
And she says to him, I know we've been saving, but what does it mean? What are we going to be able to do? What's our life going to look like? Do we have enough? And he's like, I have no idea. I've just been saving. And then they go find somebody like me because then I can sit down with them and talk to them and help them understand what they have and help them figure out what they can do and what they can't and when they can retire and everything else. I think if you don't know, then find somebody that can help you.
I'm thinking of all these questions that come up for my clients. I'm just going to I got Phil on the line. Let's do this. Another really interesting topic. I'm so curious. You must deal with this with women all the time. So the women that end up getting into marriages or partnerships later in life and how do they deal with their money? My money. I had a client once who she dated a guy for 7 years. They lived together, but she was not the mother of the kids. She was the main breadwinner. And she did not want to leave her money to those kids. And the boyfriend was like, that's horrible. And they ended up breaking up over it, right? Because she just was like, I didn't raise these kids. I came in when they're almost gone out of the house. Or retirement, where are we going to live? I make less. I saved more. How do you recommend that women have these conversations and figure out what works?
I think it's really important that they recognize that this is what was mine. The other thing that can happen beyond that is somebody's parents pass away.
Right.
And you inherit money. And so the first thing that I tell them is keep that money separate. You don't have to commingle it because once you commingle it, if something happens and you separate from your spouse, guess what? Those are now marital assets.
Right.
But if you keep them separate, they're still yours and you don't have to do that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And in those situations, if you're concerned about that, there's nothing wrong with speaking with somebody and having a prenup or something like that to protect yourself. Because you don't, in your example, she doesn't have to give those assets to him. And I know I have a client that her mother passed away several years before her father did. And her father had remarried. And her father didn't do any of that stuff. And they were so afraid that when he passed, that she was going to give the assets to her son. And they actually were relieved because she passed away before any of that happened so that it got to them because her father didn't take those precautions. And that could have happened, but unfortunately for them, it didn't.
Yeah, no, it's so complicated. When my dad died, he got remarried before, obviously, he's married to my mom for 43 years. She died. He met someone else who was super awesome, but also, so they had a prenup. And when he died, I was looking at all his emails, bless his soul. So he had decided that rather than give her the house, he was going to give her cash. But he didn't really talk to anyone and do it in the right order. And so he sold his house to my stepmom for like $10. Then there's an email to his person being like, I love my dad. Can I delete her from the $100,000 thing? And the lawyer was like, no, it's in the prenup. Like you would have to, no, you can't. It's too late. Like, and so I just think people get so attached to like, I have to do this stuff by myself. I don't need any help. There's enough, I'm smart, or I went to this school, or this should be something I can handle. And like, why what do you say to someone who's like, and also like most of the time when you're working with someone like you, the financial, the benefit to you is not like you're taking 50% of their portfolio. To me, it's like such a small percent for all the value and service that you get. But so what do you say to people who are like, I could just, if you're listening and you just have your stuff in Fidelity, like God bless your soul, good for you. But I just am wondering, like, what do you say to people that are afraid to not have all the control and just do it themselves?
So sometimes I work with people like that, but I'm still there because I'm their financial, like I'll tell you, I'm like your financial quarterback, right?
Yeah.
If you have questions about anything related to your finances, isn't it nice to have somebody that you can ask, that you can trust, that can help you? Some people, they would rather manage money, and they maybe even have the skills to do it, but they still don't know. There's so many other moving parts. Like I talked about how the tax rules change, right? Not everybody knows that. Not everybody knows all the ins and outs. And I'm not an attorney, so I don't know all the ins and outs either. So when it comes to estate, like I want you to have an estate attorney. I can help in the process. There's things that I know about the process, but there's a reason that people go to school and get specialties. And there's a reason that people do what they do so that they can learn more and they can help a lot of times they do it and it gives them a chance to help other people. I love what I do. And, you said the name of my firm is Apprise Wealth Management. Apprise was an intentional choice. Apprise means to inform. I love to help people understand and to educate. And I believe the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. Because if you didn't know the answer and you don't ask, well, how do we know? But that's the only way we learn. So it's really important to find somebody that you can talk to and help you with these things. There's no reason to do it yourself. When you're at work, do you do everything? Aren't there things that you go to other people for help for? Or aren't there if you're working for a large size company, there's other departments and you don't have the skills to do everything all that those people do. There's people that specialize. Let them help.
Man, someone told me it's like a bar stool, right? Like a 3-legged bar stool. You need like a financial planner, like an attorney, and I can't remember what the third one was. But, like all these people are working together, or your accountant. Yeah, that's it. Your accountant, your attorney, and your financial planner, right? Like that you have this team because things are changing so much. And what you said, I think I'll go back to that, is like, really this just becomes about how do you want to spend your time and how much time do you want to spend on the internet and how much time do you want to trust that? And do you want to have someone who has that? And then last, I will say that what I love about what you're talking about is, and where are you going? Because all of that information is not really going to help you if you don't have a vision. And so I love that you help your clients do that.
Well, thank you. It's doing that part of the work. It's my favorite thing of all the things that I do. I love to do that because I love that it helps build a relationship and get to know your clients. Like that's really important to me because, as a financial advisor, I work as a fiduciary, which means that it's my job to make sure that I make recommendations in your best interests. And if I work with you on your life plan, I can really do that because I know what matters to you. So I can make those recommendations in your best interest too.
I love that. You have such a big heart, Phil. I can feel it. I can feel it. Ladies, go. So in the show notes, you're going to have, Phil has a really amazing ebook, How to Flourish Through Life's Biggest Changes, what women need to know about navigating their financial future. So I would love for you to look at that. It's really, really well done. And then you can, and that is going to be, it's a long website link, but you'll be able to see that at apprisewealth.com/ebook. And then there's also this really cool free assessment. What's in that, Phil?
So that assessment, when we talked about life planning,
Yeah.
it's just to help you figure out where you stand on that journey and where your strengths and weaknesses are. And it just takes a couple minutes to complete. It's really easy.
Oh my God, I'm going to do it just for fun. Awesome. Ladies, oh my gosh. This is another rewind and share with your friends episode. So many areas where you can life check. I think that speaking for myself, like we talked about the financial role models. I think we come into money as women with those role models, better or worse. And also I think in my family, I really thought about generational financial role models. Like my great grandparents came here in the 1800s. They lived through the panic of 1918. They lived through the depression. Like all this stuff gets baked into how we deal with money. Yes. And then the time period of life that we were raised in and our own parents. And then you just are like, well, wait. And this was really what I wrote my book about. When my dad died, I was like, I have to make a really big decision. What are the legacy things I want to carry forward? And what are the old patterns and beliefs and unhealthy things around money that I want to let go of and leave behind and create a new legacy for my kids and their kids? And I think that without knowledge and information in this framework that you're talking about, evoke, then you're just spinning. And so get out of your head, get into your heart, create a plan and execute it. Thank you for being here, Phil.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love what you were saying there, because that's also part of the work that I like to do, is to understand what people's money stories are, because they have a big impact on how they think about and act around money. And you want to try to take them to what the life planning process refers to as aloha, where you can be giving, right, with your money, and it's not just for you, and you get rid of all those things that you grew up with.
Amazing. Love it. Ladies, definitely check out the show notes. You can find Phil Weiss at apprisewealth.com. All the links in the show note. You can follow him on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. He's got a YouTube channel. I bet your kids think you're the coolest dad ever, that you're like all over social media, on podcasts. Hey, that's my dad, Phil. So lovely to meet you. And ladies, whatever you do, don't forget, it's your life, your responsibility. So life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Listen, if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know you're not alone, and you don't have to settle for it. I've created a free quiz to help you pinpoint what's draining your energy and exactly how you can fix it. So head over to decodeyourdestinyquiz.com and take the 60-second quiz right now. That's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And if you're ready to dive deeper, you can book a free no-obligation consultation at marnibatista.com/private coaching. That's Marni, M-A-R-N-I, Batista, B-A-T-T-I-S, as in Sam, T-A.com/private coaching, all one word. Let's take the first step to creating a life you love on your terms. I'm Marni, and I'll see you next time.